Leslie, welcome to Cassandra. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, for having me. I appreciate you having me, and look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, so Leslie, we were just talking a little bit from AI to sports in Africa. You've seen, you have a background technology. You worked on many angles of media, sports. Then you very much like put your focus of what's going on in Africa. You are involved in many projects. If you want to maybe give us like a very, very short summary of how you got here, and then maybe also why you think like the sports industry in particular in Africa, there might be some moment that we should really watch it now.
Okay, so thank you for that question. I started my career in sports as a student athlete back at the University of Sierra Leone, and eventually migrated to the United States, where I'm now a dual citizen and reside in Houston, Texas. Obviously, my struggles as a student athlete and then an athlete in representing Sierra Leone brought a lot of things to the fore in terms of what I wanted to see get done better. And so after retiring from active track and field, I decided to explore opportunities in sports media. And so I founded African Sports Media Network, which is a publisher of African Sports Monthly digital magazine and daily news website. And that website has been running for almost 20 years now. So I pride myself on the fact that I'm able to collate information and put it out there for an audience that was pretty much not a focus for a lot of sports media outlets globally. And so we provide a service alongside with maybe one or a few other competitors. Today, I can say African Sports Media Network is the sole African sports media outlet in North America, and we're proud of that distinction. And so with time, I evolved and went from there into the business of sports, where we created a company called Africa Sports Ventures Group. And Africa Sports Ventures Group is essentially, to give a broad-based description of it, is a sports and entertainment focused solution company. Like I say, it's a broad-based description, but basically what we're trying to do is to create an enabling environment for a sports industry to grow across Africa, given the limitations. Sports is a business, a big business globally, and we know definitely that there's a great lot of possibilities in Africa, but we are underperforming vastly because we are yet to embrace the concept of what you call a sports industry. And so it's my place, and it's my intent to try and see if we can help, working alongside with partners across the continent, to see if we can help to open the eyes of people and let them see that sports is a business, and it's no longer just about recreation and pastime and all the good stuff. And so we want to see how we can translate sports into something socioeconomically beneficial as well as socioculturally beneficial for all communities across the continent, all 55 nations across the continent. So it's a job that we've embraced with a zest and with very happily at that. And so in 2020, we organized our very first Pan-African Sports Conference, which was a virtual conference, and we had President of Liberia, President George Weah, who happens to be the only African soccer player to ever win the Ballon d'Or, or the 50th of the Year award. And so we were pleased to have him as a keynote speaker. And obviously we partnered with UNESCO and a number of other entities as well. And we've made progress from that time, and we've organized an entertainment product. We created an entertainment product called the African Music Challenge, to which over 40 countries, artists from over 40 countries registered to participate in. It was also a virtual event as well. And then, of course, we had a second edition of our conference. And we're currently looking forward to our third edition, our first physical edition going forward in 2024. So our job, our mandate, what we see it is to help the industry, or to help create or build an industry across the continent. Well, a number of things have happened since today we can talk about NBA Africa. NBA is coming to Africa,
Right.
and they've started.
Before we jump into kind of like, like some topics, because like I would say like the potential, right? And I think like some of our listeners probably like, can imagine it, is obviously vast, right? It's a huge opportunity. And like I saw this, I observed this myself when like sports became a big factor here, or gyms, sports, when like sport became fashionable in Asia. Observed this myself, and it just skyrocketed. So now, as like, let's, you are on the ground, you're talking to a lot of people, from your introduction, everyone is very quickly aware that what's going on. So before we did dive into like some projects, what are kind of like big picture trends that you are seeing?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of interest in growing the space. Obviously, most people associate Africa with maybe soccer and track and field,
right?
But there are huge opportunities. There's rugby, and obviously NFL is trying to come into Africa as well. I mentioned the NBA with basketball. So there are a good number of in terms of sports disciplines and the productive that these disciplines can help to create. Because we talk about product, we talk about the type of thing that will be of value to anyone who's looking at the continent in terms of opportunities to invest. But across the continent, we see a lot of interest in people now, kind of translating and talking about fan engagement, e-commerce and stuff like that in the space, where teams before now didn't put any value on the merchandise and memorabilia, but now it's becoming a trend of fashion in a way. And so we also see where we're looking at the development of infrastructure across the continent as well. Lots of Africa's sporting infrastructures are aged. Most of them are over 40, 50 years old. So we look at a wholesale replacement of those infrastructure, not to, create anything that's a white elephant, but definitely there's huge opportunity here. I had a conversation with the CEO for Sports Nigeria Limited, Ms. Nkechi Obi, who expressed that Nigeria needs at least 200 stadiums for it to be to measure up in terms of its value in sports and how that could help to move things forward with sports in Nigeria. By the way, Nigeria is the first country in Africa to actually craft out a sports industry policy, and we're looking at how other countries can also follow suit on that. So huge opportunities in terms of infrastructure investments, and a variety of other entities as well, including broadcasting, streaming, and those type of products that will help to enhance the sports industry in Africa. But obviously, like I said, Africa's population is very young. It boasts of the youngest population in the world now. By 2030, it's said that the entire global youth population, Africa will be 42% of the entire global youth population. Wow. Which is huge. That's almost half of the global youth population. And so when you look at that, you look at the value, what that means in terms of economic opportunities and so much more. And then, of course, the embrace of modern sporting disciplines like esports, electronic sports, and how that can, basically explode on the continent. There's huge opportunities, like I say. So those are some of the trends that we're looking at in terms of these early stages of the development of a sports industry. But obviously, we need the products that are on the continent right now, like the African Cup of Nations, like the African Games, to be enhanced and developed before you can add on more content to that and more product to that to grow the space. Obviously, there's no stopping what's happening right now. Huge developments are taking place across the continent, and so we look at how all of that will be of value in the end, and how those who are looking to come into the space will know where the value is, and how they can come in and contribute to the space and help grow the sports industry on the continent.
And obviously, we start in absolute terms maybe with like low numbers, but I assume you see growth, like in the, double digits. Is there any kind of particular, area or anything in particular, maybe not a trend, but like you mentioned fan engagement, you mentioned like e-commerce, where you see, wow, this is really underappreciated. This is, this is skyrocketing right now.
It is vastly underappreciated. Obviously, the vehicles for effective e-commerce, which we would say are growing, in a sense, and then of course associated industries like fintech, financial technology, which could help enhance those spaces, are growing also vastly. We have companies like Flutterwave. Of course, you have Konga and Jumia. These are e-commerce companies across the continent. And there's room for more, in a sense, that when we talk about merchandising and memorabilia sales for sports teams and sports stars themselves, I think you have the vehicles now that are in place to help enhance and make those possibilities, those main possibilities for those sectors to grow, in a sense. So the figures are kind of low right now in terms of the reach or the footprint of those sectors, but with improved connectivity across the continent and affordability, because those are the things you look at when it comes to connectivity for the basic individual on the continent, and how they can be able to purchase something and get it, because that's the bottom line at the end of the day is, if I want to buy a jersey for the Super Eagles of Nigeria and I'm way in the interior, how do I get my jersey when I purchase it, and that type of stuff. So we look at, but those are possibilities now, because like I say, you got companies like Jumia and Konga. Those are those examples. I'm not promoting them, but those are just examples. And also you have, like I said, fintech companies which can help to bridge the gap between consumers and this business companies, a B2B relationship in the case of the companies that are pushing the products out there and things like that. So huge room for improvement. Low footprint, a very limited footprint right now, but there's definitely huge room for opportunity and growth in that sector, especially with e-commerce and how that will help to transform or translate into value for the sports industry.
And if you look at the sports industry in Africa, do you see any interesting players? Can be companies, maybe teams, figures that you think, wow, if you are interested in the industry, you should really look at them?
Yeah, you got sports teams, obviously, in South Africa. Obviously, you have the Springboks, who are huge in South Africa. That's the national team. Obviously, you have the leagues, which are also growing in rugby. And obviously, with soccer, you have TP Mazembe. This is a film club which has been very dominant. Al Ahly in Egypt and across, of course, North Africa, and of course you have Tanzania. So you have a growing fan base for most of these teams, and they're improving on their outreach to their fans through social media, through their social media handles, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook or Instagram. They're growing that following, and so obviously. And they're communicating with their fans. They're putting stuff out there that would make their fans want to, get something, buy a product. And so obviously, when you look at the trends of those teams, and of course you have, I'll mostly stick with the national teams for in this case. You have the Super Eagles for Nigeria. Of course, you have the Teranga Lions for Senegal. You have the Atlas Lions from Morocco. Those, I believe, are teams which have a high selling products. For example, the Super Eagles jersey was released by Nike back in I think it was 2019 or so, and it sold out in hours. The first batch Yeah, and I believe millions of jerseys were sold out in hours. And so you can see the thirst and hunger for this kind of relationship in business out there. So huge opportunities when it comes to those that arena as such.
And what do you think, like, you know, the ones that you just mentioned, what do you think they are doing particularly well, or and maybe particularly badly as well, or what do you have, like, you know, improvement? Is it very similar? Can I, you know, like, let's say if I look at a fan engagement with, you know, Barcelona in yeah, I don't want to call it soccer, so I call it football, but
Right.
as a good old European, but so like, what do you see? Like, do you see that as similar, or like, you know?
Yes, because I mean, trying to emulate, you know, because at the end of the day, you know, when you have best practices out there, what the best you can do is emulate and then see how you can improve on
Right.
that, right? Obviously, the jersey sales I mentioned with the Super Eagles was better in the UK. The sales were huge in the UK than it was in Nigeria itself. There are a number of reasons, and obviously we still have a very low footprint in terms of what we call, you know, like your Nikes and Adidas, sportswear companies.
I guess what, you know, look, what I'm curious is, like, what is done differently. Let's say if you're gonna, like, compare it with, you know, whatever you want to call it, advanced markets or established markets.
What is not done right at this stage? Because obviously these teams have these outfits I mentioned have quite a ways to go to measure up to. You mentioned
Right.
Barcelona. Barcelona is one of those at the top of the heap in terms of their global ability to connect with their fans and get them hooked on to whatever it is they're trying to sell or put out there. Whilst we still have a lot of these teams that we're talking about, they're just what's going on currently is typically just organic in my estimation. It's just fans who are hungry to want to be part of something, who are pushing the envelope. Not so much so the teams in this case. So I think the teams have to understand that it is their job to embrace this and know that this is huge opportunities for them to grow their revenue and then and see how they can create outlets and generate to create income streams for themselves through memorabilia sales and so much more with when it comes to fan engagement. So like I said, I think it's typically organic at this stage. And it's not so much what's done right, it's so much so what's yet to be done and how much they can improve on what could be of value to them, you know, in the long term. So quite a ways to go. Like I said, with the Super Eagles, they have Nigeria has over 210 million people as a nation, very vast diaspora that's out there in the UK, in the US. So if you put a product out for the Super Eagles in the US and in the UK, you have huge sales. Now, the issue with sales locally in Nigeria, you still have issues of transparency, accountability that will have to be contended with. But obviously, there's opportunities, and like I say, you have the outlets to which some of these companies can create relationships to sell, you know, merchandise out there, which could help grow their, like I say, their bottom line. So huge opportunities out there. Nigeria, for one, has Jumia and Konga, which operate in the country, and so there are possibilities out there for them. And you have other nations like the Atlas Lions of Morocco, who did very well in this past World Cup, the first African nation to ever reach the semifinals. Right. So there's huge opportunity for them. And they have I think they even have a better infrastructure up there in North Africa than most of the other countries in sub-Saharan Africa, say for South Africa in this case. So, but most countries in sub-Saharan Africa have to improve on their infrastructure in terms of business-to-business relationship and business-to-consumer relationship, so they can capitalize on these opportunities.
When you look ahead, right? let's say 5 years, 10 years? What's most exciting to you?
What's most exciting to me is actually the explosion of the sports and entertainment industry in Africa. I think we're at the very onset, the early stages of what could be of massive impact for Africa. It's in terms of job creation, economic opportunities, and economic growth, where teams can become economic powerhouses for communities within where they reside. Only if most of these teams start to embrace best practices. But I see what I just described with the issue of what's not present currently with in the teams and their relationships with their fans, as opposed to what happens with Barcelona and teams like that. I see the same thing in terms of fans actually forcing the industry to grow, because obviously the trends will definitely create the need for these teams to step up their game and actually create the environment for them to have deeper and better relationships with their fans. Obviously, we have the onset of where we just started the NBA Africa, which is currently operating in Africa with the Basketball Africa League. The league is in its third year and growing in leaps and bounds. And currently, the NBA Africa Basketball Africa League is valued at about $1 billion, and that will quadruple. It will grow exponentially in terms of its value and what its footprint will be in the long term. And also, you know, the Confederation of African Football is about to launch a super league in football, soccer, let's just say. So, and once that's launched and they have the right investment for that, and that kicks off, it'll be of huge value as well on the continent. So that will translate massively in many communities where those teams who will be playing in the Africa Super League will reside in. Obviously, the rest of the continent also will have an opportunity. Of course, we see also an opportunity for growth in media and streaming, and also a lot of opportunities, like I said, with that. So the growth potential, and obviously the marriage between sports and entertainment. We see Afrobeats, which is the number one genre globally, entertainment genre right now for music genre, really growing in leaps and bounds. And it's not even the tip of the iceberg yet, I would say, but it's so huge. And what I would love to see, you know, in the long term, and what I think will happen is that there will be that marriage between sports and entertainment on the continent, and obviously everybody. It will become a norm. And we see recently Burna Boy performed at the UEFA Champions League halftime show, and we saw the embrace of that and what it meant. This is a phenomenon that's been trying to be exported from the US to Europe, and now obviously Africa will have to follow suit, because, like I said, it's best practices. It's not about copying. It's about what's best practices. People just have to understand that you're not trying to copy. You're trying to do what's best for your industry for it to grow. You just have to embrace what's done, and if you can improve on that product, fine. If not, you just follow. You know, you just toe the line. So I think there'll be a marriage between those industries. Musicians will have an opportunity to grow their income stream with this marriage between sports and entertainment. And I see a huge growth. I see a huge impact on the socioeconomic and social-cultural life. I see a huge impact on the bottom line for most nations, their annual GDPs. But governments, leaders, political leaders will have to also step in to help the process to grow, like we have in Rwanda, where President Paul Kagame has been able to champion and pioneer, you know, of course, building an indoor arena, which is now the home of the NBA Africa Finals, which is the annual finals for the NBA Africa Basketball Africa League tournament. It takes place in Rwanda every year at the end of May. So we've seen that growing in leaps and bounds. In fact, they just signed a multi-year deal with the Rwanda run the development board. And that's only going to enhance their country as a destination for sports tourism and much more beyond sports tourism, because sports tourism as well. We see that happening. The Africa Cup of Nations, which is Africa's premier sports property, is going to grow as well. I see much value being put into it, best practices being applied. We have a new leader with the Confederation of African Football, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, who is a businessman. He comes from the business sector, and he's embraced the opportunity to serve to serve the football community. And so I see massive growth in that as well, because I think he's a businessman. I think he'll use best practices to help to grow that as well. Most Confederation of African Football products have been underperforming in the Champions League. Even the Africa Cup of Nations still struggling to get a major sponsor, but that will be solved. I'm very strongly convinced about that, and eventually that will grow into what it actually ought to be, and the value will quadruple. And football is only going to grow. But like I say, all involved will also have to embrace learning and developing their know-how on how to be part of this train that's moving forward, that's not stopping, they're not waiting for anyone. Everybody will have to step on and get on board that train of development in the sports space, whether it's football, whether it's rugby. Of course, with rugby, you have a new dynamic leader in the name of Mr. Herbert Mensah, former rugby player himself, very astute businessman. And he is about to transform rugby on the African continent. Like I said, other sporting disciplines are looking at possibilities in Africa. The NFL is trying to come in. As I understand, we're having forays from Major League Baseball as well. Not confirmed on that. I don't know for sure with Major League Baseball, but I know for sure the NFL has had a couple of combines on the continent, and which is, I believe they're going to increase on that as well. So lots of opportunities. For me, the growth and explosion will also have to include and the opening of offerings, in the sense that more that it's not just about soccer or football, I should say, or track and field, but there are much more out there, much more sports disciplines out there. Africa's population will be 2.5 billion by 2050. Wow. And about 2/3 of that will be young people. And so it's the upside is only up. It's only going to go up.
It's quite mind blowing. It's quite mind blowing.
It's mind blowing. It's a huge market and a huge opportunity. It's an emerging market, as you say, and it's a huge opportunity. And so we're looking at the inroads of where these developments are taking place, and we're trying to work with those sectors and see where we can help to grow. And so anyone who's looking at what they will need to focus their investment on coming into the continent, because we've had a number of entities who we've looked at in the past who have tried to invest in the industry, but they've made big mistakes, and they came in with big muscles. Well, I mean, big muscles with big financial muscle.
Yeah,
splurged a lot, but they missed the marks. And so obviously, you have to know the industry. You have to know the environment that you're working in or you're investing in, for you to know how to go about investing and getting a return on investment. Otherwise, it'll blow back in your face.
Oh, for sure. Leslie and I have this funny feeling that you are well positioned for it, and people that hang out with you and tap your brain doing exactly this. So before we wrap this up, where can people follow your work?
Well, I am on LinkedIn, Leslie Koroma, Senior on LinkedIn, and also look me up on Facebook, Leslie Koroma, and also look me up on Twitter and Instagram, same name, Leslie Koroma. And of course, you can't miss my face. So I always have my profile pictures, that mirrors me on my profiles, and so you can follow me on those handles as well. Or you can follow my work through my sports media outlet, AfricanSportsMonthly.com. Yeah, so those are the avenues you can find me in, and obviously you have my email. My email address is leslie@africansportsmonthly.com, and
Fantastic.
that's again leslie@africansportsmonthly.com.
All right, Leslie, that was fantastic. I certainly learned a lot, and I think everyone as well. Thank you.
You're welcome, Amin. I appreciate it.
Cheers.